Hi, so unfortunately the start of the recording between myself and Lisa Carrol-Davis from Houston Baptist University was cut off by Camtasia. So I just wanted to include some stuff that we had talked about, which will help you understand the structure of our discussion. So we had set out this dialogue plan, which we talked about as well at the start of the interaction. We introduced ourselves to each other and we started the discussion on first year modules and assessment with a particular interest in retention rates and internationalisation. And the bit that's missing from the discussion talks about first year modules and assessment, and we discussed my decision because of very poor retention rates in the previous year for the BA in journalism to do an early assessment in my module Introduction for Radio Journalism. That involves students having to do a 25-second voicer in week 4. So we discussed the merits of early assessment, and Lisa felt that the evidence suggests that early assessment is a good thing if it's low stakes, which in this case it was. It only made up 10% of their final mark. So that's the bit of my conversation which is missing. We'll pick up now, and we are still talking about first year assessment and first year retention rates, as well as the university's policy on internationalisation and how that may be affecting things.
And they have to do these kind of pre-sessional things so that they are up to speed more or less by the time they hit their actual modules to get that running. And that's something that's been very successful for them. It's also been something that's been very financially advantageous for them because these students are paying for those sessions. It's a way to get extra income for the university, which makes it more attractive for the university. And then it also is helping them, once they get into their modules, be more successful and retain those students.
That's really interesting, because I think the university may see that as burdensome at some point, of like, oh no, we'd have to find extra staff, and but actually if you can monetize that, horrible word, but if you can monetize that, also, I mean, this is anecdotal, but speaking to the students who have chosen to come to Scotland to study journalism, a big part of it is that they want to develop their English over the next 4 years. So maybe we could give them more of what they want in doing that, and it may also make my life a little bit easier.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big road to hoe. It's going to be a difficult thing to try to get the university to take on a project kind of that scope. But even within your department, if you could set up like a 4-week thing and get maybe some bursary money from somewhere to do that, just to kind of have it as a pilot project, even maybe having some of your master's students running it, and just kind of using that to say to the university, look, this is working and we can get these students to come here. And like you said, they want English. That's the main reason why they're studying in an English-speaking nation. You know, they're willing to pay for that, because most of your students that are coming from the upper classes anyway, because they're the ones that have the funds to come and pay those international fees that are so high.
And I guess it's about saying to the university at a corporate level as well that internationalisation isn't something that just comes on its own by saying we want that. You've got to put other structures in place for it to be a genuine offer to the international community, rather than just a come on to Scotland type offer.
Yeah, I mean, if you have if you need somebody, or if you yourself want to be put in touch with my friends in Southampton, actually my PhD supervisor is now the dean over internationalization, I think.
Oh, great! Yeah, that would be good.
And her daughter is the one that's in charge of the pre-sessional English intake.
Right.
I could put you in touch with them if you'd like.
That would be great. Yeah, I'll maybe get the details of that over email, because I think it's we're certainly being successful in terms of getting the cohort over here. I want to make sure that it's a good experience for them with this dropout rate that I was talking about earlier.
Right. Just to put in a couple of perspectives from my side where it's not so good.
Right.
Houston's super diverse. We don't have to try to be international. We have an international student body that just comes to us. Our campus, it's a small private school, and it's also Christian, so that limits kind of self-selecting.
Yeah.
But the students themselves don't have to be Christian to come. We have a sizable Muslim group that comes, a bunch of atheists. So, you know, it's based on kind of a church base, but any student can come. And that being said, it's shocking that we're the 6th most diverse campus in the nation.
Right.
Right. Even though we're already kind of limiting ourselves.
Even in the title of the university, you would think that would, in self-selection terms, much as you're not saying
exactly
you have to be Christian, there would be a certain cohort who would decide not to go. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And so we have, just because of the diversity of Houston alone, we have a lot of students who are, English as their second or third language, a large Vietnamese population, a very large Persian population, very diverse, who maybe they're, they might have been born here, but a large number of them weren't. Plus 30% of our student body is of Hispanic descent.
Okay.
So we've got kind of similar issues. Either they are English as a second or third language, or they are socioeconomically disadvantaged and their ability with the English language is not to university level.
Yeah.
And it's not standard English.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of some of the same problems that you would have with your ESL speakers. And we don't have systems in place specifically for those students. I've been working with, we have a system called the Academic Support Center. It basically organizes all of our tutoring services and students with disability services and all of those kind of areas. I've been working with them to try to start developing some English for academic purposes resources for our students to have, even if we don't have something as robust as Southampton's pre-sessionals, having resources for them. We have a writing center where they will help write and help the students kind of figure out, okay, you keep making these kinds of errors, you need to do that. And so those are even some smaller things that you could do. Perhaps finding some small bursary money within the journalism department for, again, maybe a master's student here or there to be a writing tutor during the semester.
Because I should say that we're already seeing massive benefits from the diversity as well when you're discussing something like TV or radio journalism and you have people in the room who can, compare and contrast around the world. It's much better. There are real strengths to having a diverse group in the class. It's just, it should be a good experience for them. And they have 4 years, which I would love to think that 4 years in Scotland doing a course in the English language should send them out wherever they want to go after that with great English skills. That is something that I think we should sail on. Can I ask you a bit more about these awful retention rates from first year into second year? Do you have experience of rates that are as bad as ours at around about 50%?
Not quite that bad.
Right, okay, good.
Fucking. Ours were pretty poor, and there's been a massive push at our university to increase our retention rates. And when I say they were pretty poor, they were down in the 70s.
Okay.
And so, that for us, for universities in the US, 70%, if it were 50 or less, the universities would be nigh on closing, right? There would be it'd be a major kind of scandal, something going on if they've lost that many students. For us, 70 is a pretty bad number. We're getting up to, I want to say our most recent numbers were up in the high 80s.
Okay.
Most good universities are around high 80s to 93%. Kind of some of your Ivy Leagues will be about 90%. And so we feel like we're getting where we need to go. But part of what we've seen is, again, with our diversity, we have a big socioeconomic demographic that they're first generation college students. So their parents haven't gone to the university. They don't know how to navigate that system. Plus, they're not coming into us prepared for university. They're coming out of the secondary schools, and we don't have the A-level system. And so essentially, if you get your transcripts and do well enough in your courses, you'll come into school. They're not prepared for the level of work that they're having to do. And so one of the things that we're doing with this first year course that I teach, and that I'm part of the organization body for, we have different professors and different staff members who have been very successful in the classroom take on a cohort of just freshmen who've come in, only about 20 students. It's not anything that's part of their major. It's not for it counts towards their degree, but it's not for their degree. It's just something that they have to take because they're freshmen. And what we've done, and we're kind of moving away from this just for budgetary reasons, unfortunately, each professor would have a topic that they were a specialist in. So I did ethnography and anthropology with them. And we use that as a vehicle through which to teach skills that they need to be successful. So they're learning these things in an academic setting, but giving them the skills that they need. And one of the things that I put in place was our students didn't have any idea of how to do research.
Right, yeah.
Even some of our top students didn't really know like Boolean search terms and how to actually Google things. And I found this out teaching my upper level courses, my third and fourth year modules in Latin American Studies. I had seniors coming in, fourth years coming in to me in my office, and I was showing them that I can't find anything on this topic. And I do a quick Google Scholar search, and I'm like, what do you mean you can't find anything? Like, how did you do that? And so I was realizing there's this big gap of what I came into school knowing and what they're coming in knowing. And I don't know if you have the same push for testing in your secondary schools. I know that there's been a lot of change with everything there, but we have a big push for testing in our secondary schools. And so the students are taught to pass the tests rather than how to do actual academics. And so, I devised, it wasn't even a big research project for them to do in the class, but it was just walking them through the steps of doing a research project. And then at the end, they produced an annotated bibliography.
Right.
So they didn't even write the paper, right? It was just going through the steps of how to do research. And I worked with the library for that. I worked with the Academic Support Center. We, kind of developed some different little programs within our modules to help that out. And things along those lines. So just kind of giving them skills that's going to help them in their other classes so that they can be successful.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting you bring up an issue of kind of assuming knowledge from students, which, again, the kind of internationalisation. So Scotland has its own, it's called Curriculum for Excellence, which covers the age of 3 to 18, which is separate from how it works in England and Wales. So even within the UK, there are different educational systems, but when you're also taking in people from Australia, Uruguay, France, there's no way I, as an educator, can really be across the curriculum in all those countries to know, okay, so you've all done basic research skills. I think we're almost getting to a stage where we have to not assume knowledge in early years in university and basically teach everything from scratch. Another thing, and I wonder if having taught in high school, you have an opinion on this, but something that occurs to me about our first year students who is in the Scottish system, you can come straight from 5th year from school. So some of them come at 17 and they're used to much more contact time at high school. So for example, if they've come straight from 5th year, they will have been in class 9 till 3:30, 5 days a week. And we then shift them to a system that puts them in for 3 days a week for 3 hours of class time. Now that's not to say that we don't expect them to work outside class time, but in terms of that contact time, that's something to me that maybe in designing first year activities you have to design in more contact time. To me they just seem to freak out a wee bit that they're left to their own devices, and I wonder if that's your experience as well.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, our system's also a little bit different in that our students are taking between 4 and 6 modules a semester. So they have just built in a little bit more of that contact time. They've got, each module meets for 3 hours a week. So they've got, that 12 hours or 15 hours that they're meeting with a professor. But that's something that we're working on as well, is having more, we call it advising time, kind of with their personal tutors, having them meet with their advisors more often, trying to meet with, again, us as the first year seminar instructors. So that you don't see the professors as scary. Right? It's kind of, I've gone to university now, there's kind of scary, but also helping them kind of transition. And that's one of the things we talk about a lot, is making the transition over. Because one of the things that we lament over here is that they're used to hand-holding in high school. And for us especially, and this was one of the reasons I got out of teaching high school, you're almost more accountable to the parents than you are to the children. The parents are calling you. The parents want to know what the homework is. The parents want to know what the grades are. The parents are involved. The parents, and I was tired of teaching the parents essentially rather than teaching the students. And so it's not only that they have that contact time with the teachers, the parents for us are right there involved, and they have that oversight from the parents. And then when they come and they're living in halls, and they don't have the parents there, it's a big transition. They're not in school for as often. I'm not standing over them saying, make sure you study. And I tell my first years, I tell all of my students, look, I love you. I don't care if you fail. And I don't mean that in a bad way. If you choose to do badly, that's your choice, and that I'm okay with that choice. If you want to do well, come see me. We can work on this. And that's just shocking to them that a professor doesn't have any skin in the game. It's like, oh, you failed. Well, you failed.
It's interesting because I don't know. I have quite partly because of the subjects that I teach. So I'm teaching them radio and television, so they have to perform a bit and they have to read scripts out to me. I tend to get to know the students a bit more than someone who stands in a lecture theatre, and that's no criticism, but it's just the direct nature of what I'm teaching them. They need feedback all the time, so they'll quite often come to me with their "I'm thinking of dropping out" chat, and some of the issues that they raise are things like the other lecturers don't even know my name. I don't feel like anyone cares about, and I don't know, because I'm very new to this. I do know their names. It's quite hard. We'll talk about class sizes, but I don't know if that's a realistic expectation from the student in a teaching experience, that a teacher should know their name, or no. It seems to be, particularly with first years, something that they see as that's something that the teacher should do, and I'm not sure if it's realistic in the modern teaching environment that they're going to get that.
Yeah. Again, I'm in a unique position where I'm at because we're a small university. We've got 3,500 students. And so we try to limit our class size. We try to have that personal one-on-one contact, because that's what the students are essentially paying for by coming to us. But even at Southampton, I made a point in my larger lectures to get to know my students' names, just because I knew what a difference it made for me.
Yeah.
And I think it's almost a culture, I think there's a culture change coming, because even at the uni that I'm at, a lot of my colleagues feel put out with how much interaction the students want.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, you just need your lectures, and then you come to me if you have an academic question, and that's it. And they're like, they want to come and talk to me about their personal problems, or get to know them, or just come in and chat. And for me, I think that's great, because I'm making a connection with the students, and that typically helps them perform better in class. And what we find in the literature and in kind of the evidence-based practices is the more connection like that you can make, the better your retention ends up being, and the better outcome for the students. And I'll get the information on this. My husband also works at the same uni as I do.
Oh, right.
And he's involved with our accrediting body. And he just had to go to a conference not that long ago. They have these horrendous conferences they have to go to, but there was actually a good session that was there, where Gallup, I don't know if you're familiar with the Gallup polls.
Yeah. I'm not sure they're over here anymore, but I remember Gallup polling.
Yeah, so they've come out with a big study, a big longitudinal study that they've done on like well-being and relating that to university experiences in college. And there's some really interesting data coming out, one of which is students who felt like they had at least one professor who cared about them have better life enjoyment expectations and outcomes.
Wow.
And are more kind of thriving by the criteria that they set down. And kind of having a mentor type of situation. So I'll get that. I'll have him send that on to you.
Yeah, no, that would be
send it to
great.
me so I can send that to you, and you can kind of see that information.
Because I'd like to include that in the paper that I'm writing, because a lot of this kind of first year stuff I'm quite interested in as an area of focus. But yeah, students come and say, I just want one person to care about me. If there's one person I can talk to, then that's enough. But there is also an expectation that they should be able to email lecturers and get a response within 3 days. And I, like you say, I think some teaching staff are feeling more like it's the student as customer, and they are kind of customer services, which they resent. I also think it's interesting that your approach is that it's a good thing, and you've taught high school. So my dad was a high school teacher, and because I am kind of new to teaching, a lot of my influences are probably from him. And he, knowing people's names and a bit about them was a big deal in the way that he taught. And I wonder if universities maybe need to start learning a wee bit from the way high school teachers teach. That there are benefits for the students from that, rather than the very distant lecturer at the front of the hall, I'll never know your name type approach.
Yeah.
Particularly for a subject area like ours that has this retention problem, I think we actually need to look at that kind of thing. So it would be really good if you could send that on to me. That would be great. So just to kind of summarise some of what we've said about first year modules, early assessment, good idea. As much because of early feedback as the actual assessment process itself, and we talked a wee bit about it being low stakes was quite important as well. And we've talked a wee bit about not assuming knowledge, teaching all the skills that the students need rather than assuming that they already have some parts of those skills. We've talked a bit about internationalisation and some of the support networks that could be put in specifically for international students, and a bit about the kind of more personal approach that high school teachers have that maybe could help inform a wee bit more of what we do. So the next thing I had on my list of things to talk about, because I know I'm already gabbing away, is a bit about some of the modules that I teach, and how they're, I don't know if this is common to some of the stuff that you teach in language terms. So I teach Introduction to Radio Journalism to first year, Introduction to TV Journalism after that to first year. In second year students, I teach a module called Introduction to Broadcast News, and separately Introduction to Sports News.
Wonderful.
In third year, I teach a module called Broadcast Feature Production and another module called Specialist Production. And hopefully that's me up to 6. So, my modules have to contain quite a lot of practical skills of journalism. So things like how to use a video camera. Oh, my connection has gone down. I'm going to try and call you back. Hello, sorry.
Hi there.
No problem at all. I'll just make this window a little bit bigger. Yeah, so I was listing off all my modules, and they have to do practical things like teaching people to use cameras, how to edit, also things like how to script, and we do things like voice training to teach them how to use their voice in a more broadcast way. But the modules also, partly through choice, I like to include theory-based stuff around how television, radio have evolved and why they've become such a big part of society and what their part in society is. It's obviously, I think, particularly relevant in Britain, where we have state-funded, almost broadcasters, about how are they accountable and things like that. So it's that mix of teaching practical and theory in the same class, and how that ends up in assessment. So we've just gone through a revalidation process where they've looked at what we teach and how we teach it. And one of the criticisms of our undergraduate programme is that it's too practical and not theory-based enough, which is a bit tricky, because as I'll talk a wee bit, we also have an external accrediting body, which is the Broadcast Journalism Training Council, who want our courses to be more practical and less theoretical. And the university has set out as one of its key aims and objectives that we create work-ready graduates. Now, obviously, theory is part of creating work-ready graduates, but you only have a set amount of teaching time, again, for budgetary reasons. So if you're putting in more theory, you're taking out more practical. But where I think I currently might be missing a trick is that I am teaching theory, but not necessarily assessing theory. And I think where universities and validation bodies and all that, they kind of see much more in what you assess, what you teach. So for example, in my module Introduction to Radio Journalism, which I talked a wee bit about at the start, that's the module where I introduced the assessment in week 4, the 25-second long piece. And the other part of the assessment was the student performing a live 2-way report, which is me as a presenter asking the questions, they're the reporter, and they've got to summarise a story, and they get one go at it, and it's live, and that's what they're assessed on. there were loads of issues around the way the BBC is funded and whether you have to script before you go live on air or whether you don't have to script for legal reasons and compliance and all those things that weren't directly assessed. And I think I need to start including some kind of theory assessment in all these broadcast modules, which historically hasn't been there. And I wonder what you think about that. Do you have to assess theory?
Did you, just a quick question about the body that said that you weren't doing enough theory. What kind of, is that based on student feedback or is that based on a kind of a external audit?
This was an external from Newcastle University who came to...
Oh, don't get me started on Newcastle.
Well, what I think is...
experience with them. I did my PhD there.
Oh God. I think for one institution to review another is quite a complex thing, and I'm not sure. So the University of the West of Scotland grew out of a technical college, which was very much about teaching people the direct practical skills that they needed, and it has transitioned into a university, as have many others, but it's the expectation locally is that it's still, people who live around here still see it as the technical college. They don't see it as somewhere to go to do a heavily academic degree. So Newcastle, I don't know that much about, but I'm not sure we should try and replicate what other universities do, because your individuality is your strength in some ways, and if people know what they're getting, I think you establish a contract with students when they come for interview, when they apply, and you say, we are going to teach you to be a working journalist, we're not going to teach you to be a media academic. If you see the difference. So yeah, that's how it came about, was an external.
Okay, just wanted to, because sometimes with students, like if it's based off of kind of like when they had the league tables and everything, if the students don't know that they're getting theory, they might not say that they're getting theory. It just can be just as easy as calling it, hey, this is theory.
Yeah, we've had that with feedback as well, where if you don't tell them it's feedback, they don't realise it's feedback and they think you're just nagging them, so you have to kind of say, this is me giving you feedback.
Exactly. Yeah, so you know how that goes.
Yeah.
Well, I think even with you might not even need to add an actual extra assessment on theory. Because the students are employing their theory when they do the two-way report and when they do these other things. Yeah. If you just take part of the two-way report and make a portion of that grade theory, and however you applied that theory, that may solve your external auditor's problem. Yeah.
So the learning outcomes, for example, for that module where demonstrate an understanding of news values in broadcast media, which in writing a script you do need to demonstrate that. Demonstrate proficiency in news gathering, interviewing and writing news stories for audio medium, which is fairly straightforward, and demonstrate proficiency in presenting broadcast news stories to specific audiences across a range of media and techniques. So that thing of like understanding audiences is actually very theory based.
Yeah.
It's just not heavily, this is theory. And so, I don't know, I think what you're saying is true, that we maybe need to foreground the bits that are theory to the students, but also to people like the external examiners who don't see that you have to know the theory to do that part of the assessment well. So, but I see what you're saying as well, of maybe just in the marking scheme including a column that says theory of journalism might just make them a bit happier.
As part of what they already do. So especially when it comes to things like accreditation, we're in assessment bodies and everything, we're very big on working smarter, not working harder. Yeah. So if the assessment body says, oh, you need to show us that you're doing this, if you're already doing it, you don't need to necessarily add another assessment into it, but just make it, like you said, foreground it, make it overt that I'm doing this. And so all of a sudden students, 10% of this thing that's worth X amount is going to be how well you apply the theory. And that's, is, to me, that's as subjective as anything else that you would grade. Is you've done a good job, I'm the expert, I know that you've done a good job, and I can show you how, but, it makes people feel better if you say this portion of it is actually making sure that you've applied the theory well. Yeah.
Also, class sizes, for budgetary reasons, the university has set a minimum class size now of 25, which meant means we have, I know, but it means we have combined our two programmes, which used to be separate. So we had journalism and sports journalism. They were both sitting around about 22, but because we couldn't meet the 25, we had to put them all into one class of 46, it ended up being. And which is fine for like lecture style formats, that works okay. But for classes like mine where I have to get 46 of them individually voice trained, and go through their scripts and have them rehearse their scripts, and that's a much larger class size than we've been used to, and that, I think, it influenced how I taught that module.
I bet.
I tried to do more kind of peer-to-peer working and assessment, which I don't feel totally comfortable with, but I'm trying to get around what I see as kind of an imperfect situation. So things like I would get them to interview each other and to write up reports on each other, and then feed back on each other to say, well, did you find out the interesting things about me in the report that you did on me, and things like that. But it also influenced assessment in as much as I kept assessment short. So in total, they did their live two-way, which was about 3 minutes long, and they did this pre-recorded 25-second thing. So it's in total a portfolio of only about 3.5 to 4 minutes per student. But it had to be manageable. I had to be able to give them pretty quick feedback, or else it became a really long, drawn out process. So it was class size that motivated me in doing that, if I'm honest. But I also think in terms of the first year retention thing, it felt better for them too, that they weren't, I feel like we've maybe, now that I've gone to this, I feel like we've maybe previously over-assessed them, where actually I could find out if they're good or bad students in that smaller portfolio. And I wonder if you have a kind of view on, do we over-assess sometimes for our own benefit?
Yeah, I think we definitely do. And that's something that we actually ended up doing. And again, it was kind of to satisfy the accrediting bodies. It was something we ended up doing in our first year seminar this past year, that there were so many little assessments, and even us as professors felt this. And it came out of the committee that I'm part of, and I did my best to lobby for fewer assessments, but they were like, no, each objective needs an assessment, and and so it was, I'm like, no, it doesn't actually. And they had all of these little things, and the students were saying, we're doing more work for this course that doesn't actually count for our degree than we do for our degree courses. Why is that happening? And so that's one of the things we're looking at, is how are we going to essentially do assessment, or kind of how are we meeting these learning objectives without having the students do actual assessment, putting work on the professors and work on the students. But at the same time, in my classes and in one of my upper level modules, I realized I was giving them way too much work, I was giving them way too little work. And so when it came time for the end, it was so high stakes that it was either you pass it or you fail. And that was really troubling for some of the students, and some of them really struggled with that. And I think for first years, especially because they're coming from a situation where they have constant feedback and constant homework and constant, chances for correction, at least, like you did, at least the one early one to touch base with them, where they have a chance to kind of find out how you assess, find out how you kind of manage things, what your feedback's going to be like, see how they're doing, what the expectations are for class. At least something like that is important. If not, depending on how they do, maybe two. So if you find that they do so-so on that first one, and then they're all doing really pretty poorly, or they're struggling, well, maybe you need to add another smaller, still manageable for you and manageable for them, but something smaller that they can do that's, again, giving them, okay, this is another chance for you. It's not going to kill you, but you need to do a good job, because otherwise you're going to sink when you hit the next one.
And I think what you said earlier on was definitely true about giving them the opportunity to show improvement. It really worked particularly interestingly with the international students. They were really able to show a difference between week 4 and week 12 of their first term in Scotland. They were much better, and not necessarily the highest grades in the class, but being able to show them how they progressed, I think, made them feel much more secure in their place in the course. So I think that is something that I should try and build in all modules.
And there's something that I meant to mention earlier when we were talking about the internationalization and those early assessments for them. They're learning the culture of the UK education system. in the Scottish education system. And if they don't know that, and I mean, even for me as an American coming in, I had to learn how, education worked in England when I was doing my master's and my PhD, and it was completely different from what I did. And just having that chance for them to realize early, okay, this is how it works. This is what we're doing. That gives them a chance to be, okay, now I know what I'm doing. I'm ready for this next big thing at the end of the semester.
Yeah. Another kind of concept which I sort of invented for myself was an idea of like supported assessment, if you know what I mean. So the fact that when they were doing their live two-way, I was there playing the role of the presenter, I felt made them kind of raise their game a wee bit compared to just putting two students together. But also I was able to coach them a wee bit in the minutes immediately beforehand, saying, okay, take your time, you've only got one go at this, but nice and calm, remember everything you've been taught. And they performed exceptionally well in that assessment. So in building the assessment for Introduction to Television, which again is a portfolio of 5 minutes, I thought, how can I make this supported the way that assessment was, rather than just being done in isolation in your own time. So what I'm trying to do, and I'm part way to setting this up, is to take them, they have to interview somebody and they have to do a piece to camera live. So what I'm doing is setting up 2 assessment days, one for sport and one for news, because we still have those 2 areas of interest, where they'll go to, in the case of sport, the local football team, who are going to give me like 10 footballers all on the same day, and I'll be there and they all have to interview a player, but they're all doing it together and I will be there to help them, and they have to do their live down the camera. So there'll be an equivalent one for news, which is working with a cultural project, who again are giving us a big swathe of people all to be interviewed. Again, I haven't really got any evidence-based research to back this up, but I have a feeling that assessment as a sort of a supported day, also kind of a fun day, something that the student looks forward to, rather than doing in isolation in their house on their own, seems to raise performance a wee bit. And my thing is, I want them to get the best mark they possibly can. So if I can create assessment conditions that make students perform well, then that's a good way to do it.
Again, you're finding your way into good evidence-based teaching practices.
Right.
Yeah, that's definitely so. And again, that also goes back to the contact between the teacher and the student, right? And that creating that rapport. And when you create that rapport and they realize that you are concerned about them, you're interested, you're invested in their performance, they do want to perform better and they feel more comfortable. But like you said, just at the end, you're creating this setting for success for them. And yes, that's also something, not just that, but the kind of it being a big project, it being something that they go out and do. It's not just something they, like you said, do in their bedroom or do kind of, doesn't really count. They're going to talk to footballers. Like that's like, I want to go be part of this football. That'd be awesome. Or they're going to go talk to this cultural group and do something that's actually meaningful and useful. Part of the Gallup poll is being involved in a significant research project that might last a semester or more than a semester. Again, boosted students, not just their outcomes during university, but post-university, was meaningful for them. And that's, again, it's something you can find in that poll that I'll send you. But yeah, that's definitely you're doing very, very good things with that.
Oh, thank you.
It takes time out of your schedule. And I think you're probably an anomaly with a lot of your colleagues. Because you're willing to take that time out of your schedule to go do that and set this up for them, rather than them, again, doing it easier on you in their own time.
So there are those who would argue that the students would learn more by setting up their own interviews rather than me giving them interviews. But I guess, having come as being a working journalist, I want them to interview people that they don't know. So if I leave it to students to organise their own interviews, they'll interview quite commonly their mother. And it's not, it doesn't actually test them in the way that I want them to be tested. So while I am doing the work of setting up this scenario, it means that they will be interviewing someone who they maybe haven't directly researched. They can research the club, but they don't know that much about the person, and they've got to be able to create a rapport with someone. And that, to me, is one of the kind of the softer skills that I want to assess. is can you build up a relationship with someone in an interview? And that's why I think it's worthwhile. But I think if you were to speak to my colleagues, they would say, well, that's a waste of your time. You should have just made them do it themselves, or got them to interview their own professors or something like that. But I want them as well to come away with it with a memory of, oh, I went and interviewed this player, that they can talk to people about, and that there's a general more positive feeling about their university experience, because I have in my head these retention rates that we've got to make first year fun.
Yeah.
It's got
well,
to be
and
fun.
If you're thinking about the university's idea of producing job-ready students,
Yeah.
this is something they can put on their CV, even if it's never been published anywhere. I interviewed X footballer. Yeah. Like that's a thing that is going to be useful to them, rather than I interviewed my professor. Yeah. Or I interviewed my mom.
Yeah. And also, I'm encouraging them to create YouTube accounts and to keep these portfolio items kind of public facing, so that they are building a professional portfolio from first year onwards. Also, so that we can all revisit it when they're in fourth year and go, oh, look at you when you're in first year, and let's look at the I mean, I don't think it'll be bad, but let's look at the progression. I'm not sure they see how much they improve as much as we, the teachers, sometimes do. So I think it'd be good to track that back.
No, that's a fantastic idea as well. That's really good.
And the last thing I had on our wee schedule of things to talk about, we sort of touched on it a bit, was this external influences on teaching, accreditation bodies. So there's been a debate raging within our course about whether we should be accredited or not. So the university's point of view is that they would like all courses to be accredited by some kind of outside body. They feel that it helps with marketing, but they also feel that it helps with generally keeping standards high. But each accrediting body, and I'm sure this is the same in your own subject area, comes with its own criteria. And ours is set by the Broadcast Journalism Training Council, which is run by people like Sky News and the BBC, but it's the industry setting what it wants from graduates. So the big debate is, well, we're not here to train for industry. Previously, people like the BBC would have extensive training programmes of their own, which for budgetary reasons in their industry, they're ditching, and they would like universities to turn out people who are ready to step onto the BBC and present programmes. So we have recently lost our BJTC accreditation for half of the course. And the reason for that is, as one of their criteria, they have that every student from level 8 to level 10, which is second to fourth year, must do 15 news days a year. So a news day is a simulated newsroom environment where students have to take the news of the day and turn it into radio programmes, TV programmes and online news. So the tension is that you're not really teaching on those days. Well, you are, but you're not teaching in a lecture type format. And there's a feeling that 15 is too many per year with all the other things that we have to teach. So that's why we lost accreditation, because we didn't do it. So that tension, I was quite interested to know if that kind of affects courses like your own in the same way, or, you know, is accreditation necessarily a good thing in pedagogy terms, if you know what I mean? Like, if it's not what your research and your analysis says you should be teaching the students, is it still something you should pursue?
Yeah, I'm a bit of an odd duck when we think about pedagogy. There are lots of good things you can find in it, but I don't buy wholeheartedly into all of the kind of... I'm not an educational philosophy diehard. I think a lot of it's a bunch of bahooey. And so when you get into pedagogy, and a lot of the education specialists, they think accreditation is a must, and it's a be-all and end-all. Yeah. Personally, I think that just reflects a lot of, I would call it uncharitably brainwashing among the education community, that they're brought up through their modules, accreditation, gold standard, have to have it. And from my experience, I don't think that that's true. I think accreditation can be useful. I think it has some beneficial parts, But 9 times out of 10, when it's applied, you just do it not for the benefit of your program, but to jump through hoops so that you can have that rubber stamp of accreditation. So there are benefits. You can, if you are very mindful about how you put it into practice, derive good outcomes from it. But again, 9 times out of 10, it just ends up being a hoop you jump through, like having those 15 hours, even though you don't think that it's good for your program. You need to have those 15 hours and make it look somehow that you've had those 15 hours.
Yeah, well, it's 15 days.
That's it, the 15 days.
Whole days, which if you're only supposed to be teaching each class for 3 hours, so you end up having to bring students in sometimes for 3 weeks for just back-to-back 5 days a week, and everything else goes out the window. It just feels very burdensome. And at some point, I do think we maybe need to stand up and say, this isn't good. It's not good for anybody. It's just ticking a box. And particularly, I think, because I've come straight from working for the BBC, it's kind of the emperor's new clothes to me when I can say, this is not what industry wants. You may say that you represent industry, but they're not learning. It would be more appropriate for me to be genuinely teaching them in that time than just ticking a box and saying, my students did a news day today. They didn't learn anything, but they did a news day.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the kind of, that's the double-edged sword with the accreditation, right? Supposedly it helps keep standards even and level, and to an extent it does. But then it also ends up becoming box ticking. If you are a good program and you're trying diligently and in good faith to do the best by your students, accreditation isn't necessarily going to make that happen. Now for us, depending on your program, you have different accrediting bodies per kind of department or per program. My program doesn't have an accrediting body.
Yes.
Right, exactly. Now, our major accrediting body that's over our entire university, they would like for each degree to have some sort of outside assessment by some either accrediting body or something, and that doesn't exist for my degree. My degree actually spans 3 different departments.
Yeah.
It spans, politics, history, and languages.
Yeah.
So, there's no one, and so it's easy for me to kind of keep out of that. Now, for psychology, one of my good mates teaches in the psychology program. She's one of the directors of the program. They've obviously got their own accreditation. And oftentimes they find that their accreditation and what they need to do so that when their students graduate, they are licensed to then go practice is contrary to the university's desires and principles. Largely those desires are money driven. So let's lower our standards for admitting master's students so that we can get more students in and get more money from them. And she says, no, we have to have at least this minimum grade point average in order to maintain our accreditation. So for her, the accreditation gives her leverage to maintain the quality that she wants. And especially, and I would say it's similar to what you're doing with your broadcast students. They have an effect on the people around them and on the culture around them. They need to have good standards. So if the accrediting body is helping maintain those good standards, yes, definitely. But if not, if it's just a box to tick, maybe there's some other accreditation you could find or some other standard you could appeal to.
Yeah, we're at a kind of an impasse with them where they've taken accreditation away from half the course. We also pay quite a lot of money to accreditation bodies, which I'm just not sure if it's a very expensive way to be criticised every year. So yeah, I think also when they were in, they were saying to me, well, how many of your students joined this course because it was a BJTC accredited course? And I was like, honestly, none of them. And I know that's not what you want to hear, because in your little world it's all, I want to go to a BJTC. The students aren't even aware in a lot of cases that we have this accreditation. It's not, there are so many other deciding factors, I think, for potential students when looking at a university that I'm not sure accreditation isn't there, or their parents' top 10. And our cohort is changing a wee bit. I think more of the wealthier families from abroad sending their students here may change that, and they may be looking for accreditation. But our domestic students, it's about, can they commute to the place? Do they have the grades to get in? It's not necessarily about accreditation. So I think it's an internal discussion that we have to have as a department. But I suppose it's becoming more obvious to me the longer I'm in teaching that your job is not simply about teaching. Quite often it's about advocating up the way, saying what you're asking me to do isn't actually good for my students. and that's something that I'm trying to get better at. That's
It's
all.
a constant struggle.
I'm getting that now. That's all been really useful, Lisa, and it's been great to talk to you. I really hope we can stay in touch. And
Yeah,
that
you've got my
stuff,
email, you've got my ID now. Feel free to shoot me a text whenever, or
that
shoot
would
me an
be
email,
great.
and glad to help you out.
Yeah, because the stuff you suggested about Southampton and their kind of support stuff, I'd love that, and the Gallup polling stuff as well would be fantastic.
Definitely.
But thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, and please do
My
stay in touch.
pleasure. Hope you have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Lisa.
Right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.